There's a moment that happens to almost everyone, usually late at night, when you look in the mirror and something feels off. Not your appearance, something deeper. You stare at your own eyes and think, who is this person looking back at me? It's not a question you can answer. It's more like a feeling, a hollow recognition, as if you're looking at a stranger who happens to be wearing your face. And the strangest part? This feeling isn't new. It's been building for years, maybe even decades. You've been living your life, checking the boxes, playing the roles, saying the right things. But somewhere along the way, you stopped feeling like yourself. And now, when you're alone with your reflection, that absence becomes impossible to ignore. Maybe you brush it off, tell yourself you're tired, stressed, overthinking. But deep down, you know it's something else, something more unsettling. You can't recognize yourself anymore. Not really. Not in the way you used to. Not in the way you thought you always would. And here's what nobody tells you. This isn't a sign that you're losing your mind. It's a sign that you've been living someone else's life for so long that your own soul has become a stranger to you. Carl Jung called this the fragmentation of the self. He believed it was one of the most devastating psychological experiences a human being could have. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's silent, invisible, a slow dissolution that happens while you're busy being functional, being productive, being acceptable. You become a collection of fragments, pieces that don't quite fit together anymore. The person you are at work, the version you show your family, the self you present online, the one you save for your closest friend, each one real, but none of them whole. And in the center of all these fragments, the real you, the essential you, becomes harder and harder to find. This is the crisis of the modern psyche. And if you're feeling it, if any of this resonates in a way that makes your chest tight, then this video is for you, because we're going to explore what Jung discovered when he looked into this mirror. When he dared to ask, what happens when we lose ourselves? So before we go further, ask yourself, are you ready to meet the stranger in your mirror? Are you ready to discover why that stranger has your face? Because once you understand, once you truly see, there's no going back to the comfortable lie of not knowing. Let me describe someone. See if you recognize them. They have a good job, maybe even a great one, the kind their younger self would be proud of. They have people in their life, relationships that look stable from the outside. Their social media shows a life in motion, accomplishments being checked off, milestones being reached. By every conventional measure, they're succeeding. And yet, they wake up every morning with a weight they can't name. They go through their day like an actor who's forgotten they're in a play, speaking lines that feel rehearsed, hitting marks that feel arbitrary. They smile at the right moments, laugh on cue, express the appropriate emotions, but inside there's just nothing. Or worse, there's noise, endless, meaningless noise. This is the paradox Jung observed in person after person who came to him. Successful people, functional people, people who had everything except the one thing that mattered, a sense of being real, of being whole, of being home in their own skin. He noticed something fascinating. The more successful someone appeared externally, the more fragmented they often felt internally, as if each achievement was actually a piece of themselves they had to sacrifice. Each goal reached was a part of their soul they had to leave behind. The source of this silent tragedy is a devastating lesson we learn somewhere along the way, that our authentic self, our raw self, our true self, is somehow inadequate for the world we live in. So we start building. We construct personas, carefully crafted versions of ourselves designed to fit, to succeed, to be accepted. And each persona is a mask, the professional mask you wear at work, where you're competent, confident, always in control. The social mask you wear with friends, where you're fun, easygoing, never too much or too little. The family mask, where you're the responsible one, the caretaker, the one who has it together. The digital mask, where you're curated, polished, enviable. These masks aren't lies exactly. They're fragments, real pieces of you, isolated and amplified. But here's the trap. The more you wear these masks, the more you forget there's a face underneath. The more you play these roles, the more you forget there's a self beneath the performance. And the symptoms are everywhere. That feeling of going through the motions. The sense that life is happening to you rather than through you. The exhaustion that doesn't go away with rest because it's not your body that's tired, it's your soul. The relationships that feel performative, even the intimate ones. The success that feels hollow. The achievements that bring no joy. You thought reaching the goal would make you feel complete. Instead, you just feel more fragmented, more scattered, more lost, because you were climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. You were building a life that looked right from the outside, but felt wrong from the inside. You were becoming who you thought you should be instead of who you actually are. But here's what Jung discovered. This fragmentation isn't permanent. This loss of self isn't final. There is a way back. But it's not the way you think. It doesn't involve achieving more, fixing more, optimizing more. It involves something far more radical. It involves breaking the mirrors, all of them, every single mask, every crafted persona, every false reflection. And in the shattered pieces, finding the face that was always there, waiting, unchanged, true. Carl Jung spent decades studying a question that haunted him. Why do so many people feel like strangers to themselves? Why does the human psyche fragment? And most importantly, what lies beneath the fragmentation? What he discovered changed psychology forever. Jung realized that the human psyche operates like a hall of mirrors. Each mirror reflects a different version of you. The you that your parents see. The you that your culture demands. The you that your trauma created. The you that your ambitions drive. And in the center of this hall, barely visible, is the self. The essential, unchanging, eternal you. The one that existed before the mirrors. The one that will remain after they shatter. But here's the problem. From the moment we're born, we're taught to look at the mirrors, not at the self. We're taught to identify with the reflections rather than with the source. And over time, we forget there's a difference. The ego, what you think of as I, is actually just one of these reflections. It's the conscious personality you've built to navigate the world. It's necessary, it's functional, but it's not you. It's what you've become in response to life, not what you essentially are. Jung made a crucial distinction. The ego is the center of consciousness. The self is the center of the total personality, including both consciousness and the unconscious. The ego is small, limited, defensive. The self is vast, complete, whole. And here's where it gets profound. Most psychological suffering comes from confusing the two, from thinking the ego is all you are, from believing the reflection is the reality. When you live from the ego, you live in constant fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being exposed, fear of losing what you've built. Because the ego knows, at some level, that it's constructed, that it's fragile, that it can shatter. But when you connect to the self, when you touch that essential core, everything changes. Because the self can't be threatened. It can't be diminished. It simply is. It exists beneath all your failures and successes, beneath all your identities and roles. Jung called the journey from ego to self individuation. It's not about becoming someone new. It's not about self-improvement or self-optimization. It's about something far more radical. It's about removing everything that isn't you, stripping away every false layer until only truth remains. Imagine you're a sculptor, but instead of adding material to create a form, you're removing material to reveal a form that was always there. That's individuation. You're not building a self, You're uncovering it. But here's what makes this process so difficult. To uncover the self, you have to be willing to lose the ego, or at least to see it for what it is, a useful tool, a necessary fiction, but not the truth of who you are. And that's terrifying, because the ego has been running your life. It's been making decisions, forming relationships, building your entire reality. To question it feels like questioning existence itself. But Jung discovered something beautiful. The ego doesn't have to die. It just has to surrender. It has to step aside and let the self emerge. It has to stop being the center and become a servant, a translator between the vast depths of the unconscious and the practical demands of daily life. This is what he meant by the mirror of the soul. The ego is the surface reflection, constantly changing with the light, distorted by the angle. The self is what the mirror reflects when all distortions are removed. Constant, true, undeniable. When you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself, what you're actually experiencing is the ego realizing it's not the whole story. It's the constructed self beginning to crack, and the essential self starting to peek through. It feels like a crisis, and it is, but not in the way you think. It's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. The false beginning to crumble, so the true can finally emerge. Jung worked with hundreds of people going through this crisis, and he noticed a pattern. It usually happened in midlife, not because of age, but because by midlife, the masks we've been wearing are getting heavy. The personas we've constructed are starting to suffocate us. The life we've built on ego alone is revealing its emptiness. This is why the midlife crisis isn't about buying a sports car or changing careers. At its core, it's about the soul screaming, "This isn't me. This was never me. And I can't pretend anymore." It's about the self demanding recognition, demanding its rightful place at the center of your being, demanding that you stop performing and start existing. But you don't have to wait for a crisis. You can choose, right now, to begin the journey. To step into the hall of mirrors with clear eyes, to look at each reflection and ask, is this me? Or is this what I've become? To dare to look past all the images to find the one looking. Because that's what Jung discovered. The one who looks at all the reflections is the only thing that's real. The observer, the witness, the self. And when you find it, when you truly find it, everything changes. Not because your life changes, but because the one living, it finally comes home. Let me tell you how it starts. How the self gets buried. How the stranger appears in your mirror. It starts the moment you're born into a world that already has plans for you. Expectations, requirements, models of what you should become. Your parents look at you and they see potential, but not your potential. Their dreams, their unfinished business, their ideas of success. And with every good job, and I'm disappointed, they sculpt you, shape you, mold you into something that fits their vision. This isn't malicious. They genuinely believe they're helping, preparing you for a world they know. But in the process, they teach you the most dangerous lesson. That love is conditional. That acceptance requires conformity. That being yourself is not enough. So you learn to adapt, to read the room, to become what the moment demands. When you're sad, but your parents need you to be strong, you learn to hide sadness. When you're angry, but anger isn't allowed, you learn to bury rage. When you're creative, but practical is valued, you learn to suppress imagination. When you're sensitive, but tough is required, you learn to build walls. Piece by piece, feeling by feeling, impulse by impulse, you learn to exile parts of yourself, to lock them away in the basement of your psyche, to pretend they don't exist. Jung called these exiled parts the shadow, not because they're evil, but because they live in the darkness, out of conscious awareness, denied, rejected, hidden, but still there, still alive, still influencing you in ways you don't recognize. And here's the cruel irony. The parts you exile are often the parts that make you most yourself. your wildness, your vulnerability, your strangeness, your passion. The things that make you unique are the first things you learn to hide, because the world doesn't want unique. It wants predictable, manageable, safe. Then society steps in with its own architecture of control. The education system teaches you to think in predetermined ways, to value what can be measured, to compete rather than collaborate. It rewards conformity and punishes originality. It prepares you for a machine-like existence where you're valued for output, not essence. The corporate world continues the programming. It teaches you to be professional, which really means to be emotionally muted, personally minimal, essentially invisible. To bring only the productive parts of yourself to work, to leave your humanity at the door. The social world, especially now in the digital age, teaches you to curate, to edit, to present, to perform your life for an audience that's also performing. Everyone showing their highlight reel while hiding their reality. Everyone pretending wholeness while feeling fragmented. And romantic relationships, they become another stage for performance. You learn to modify yourself for love, to suppress incompatibilities, to be less of this, more of that, until you're not sure if you're in love or if you're just well adapted to each other's expectations. Layer by layer, year by year, the prison builds itself around you, not with bars, but with beliefs. Beliefs about who you should be, what you should want, how you should live. And the cruelest part? You become your own jailer. You internalize these demands so deeply that you police yourself. You don't need external pressure anymore. You've learned to pressure yourself. This is what Jung saw in his patients. People who had been so well trained, so thoroughly adapted, that they no longer knew which thoughts were their own and which were implanted, which desires were authentic and which were adopted, which fears were real and which were inherited. They had become, in his words, psychological slaves, free in body but imprisoned in soul. And the prison has a special kind of torture. It's comfortable, it's familiar, it even brings rewards, social approval, professional success, the appearance of having it all together. So you convince yourself it's not a prison at all. It's just life. It's just how things are. It's just being an adult. But your soul knows better, and it will not be silenced forever. It starts to rebel through your body first. Unexplained aches, mysterious ailments, chronic fatigue that no amount of rest can cure. Your body is trying to tell you something your mind refuses to hear, that this life, this performance, this imprisonment is killing you slowly. Then come the psychological symptoms, the anxiety that has no clear source, the depression that makes no logical sense, the feeling of numbness, of going through the motions, of life happening at a distance. These aren't disorders, they're messengers. Your psyche screaming that something is wrong, that you've strayed too far from yourself. Your dreams become more vivid, more urgent, filled with imagery of being trapped, of missing important appointments, of being unprepared for crucial moments. The unconscious trying to get your attention, trying to show you the bars you can't see. Your relationships start to feel hollow, even the good ones, because when you don't know yourself, you can't truly let anyone else know you. Intimacy becomes impossible. You can share space, share time, share activities, but you can't share self, because you've lost touch with it. And still, you might try to fix it within the prison. Work harder, be more disciplined, optimize more, achieve more, as if the solution to feeling like a stranger to yourself is to become even more of what you're supposed to be. But Jung knew the truth. You can't think your way out of this. You can't achieve your way out. You can't positive think your way out. There's only one way out, and it's the same way you got in, through awareness, through honest looking, through the courage to see the bars, to see the beliefs, to see the ways you've been living for everyone except yourself. The prison doesn't unlock from the outside. It unlocks from the inside. When you finally admit, this isn't living, this is surviving, and I didn't come here to just survive. Your soul has been trying to reach you. For years, maybe decades, it's been sending signals, leaving clues, creating symptoms. But you've been trained to ignore them, to medicate them, to optimize them away. Let me teach you to listen. The first language your soul speaks is discomfort. Not the discomfort of growth or challenge, but a deeper discomfort. A sense of being fundamentally misaligned. Like wearing clothes that don't fit, but pretending they do. It's the feeling you get when you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, but something inside you whispers, "This is wrong." When you're having the success you planned for, but it tastes like ash. When you're with people you care about, but you feel profoundly alone. This discomfort isn't a problem to be solved. It's information. It's your soul saying, "We're off course. We're living from the surface. We're not home." But most people interpret this discomfort as inadequacy. They think, "I must not be good enough yet. I must need to try harder." So they double down on the very patterns that created the discomfort in the first place. And what happens when the soul's whisper of discomfort is ignored? It begins to scream. And it screams through the second language, repetition. Your soul speaks through patterns that won't break no matter how aware you become. The same relationship dynamic showing up with different people. The same self-sabotage appearing just as success is within reach. The same conflicts recurring in different contexts. Jung called these complexes. Autonomous patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that operate independently of your conscious will. They're not random, they're purposeful. They're your soul's way of saying, "There's something here you need to see, something you haven't integrated." Each repetition is an invitation. Not to shame, but to curiosity. What is this pattern trying to show me? What part of myself am I still refusing to see? The third language is dreams. This is where your soul speaks most directly. When the ego is asleep, when your defenses are down, the unconscious comes forward with its truth. Pay attention to recurring dreams. Dreams of being lost. Dreams of missing flights or trains. Dreams of being unprepared. Dreams of being chased. These aren't random firings of neurons. They're symbolic communications from the parts of you that are trying to get your attention. A dream of being lost in a familiar place. Your soul saying you've lost yourself in the life you know. A dream of missing a flight. Your soul saying there's a departure you need to make, a journey you're avoiding. A dream of being unprepared for an exam. Your soul saying you're being tested on living authentically and you're not ready because you don't know who you are anymore. Write them down, not to analyze them intellectually, but to honor them, to acknowledge that your psyche is speaking. And when you start listening to dreams, they become clearer, more direct. Your soul rewarding your attention with deeper communication. The fourth language is the body. Your body doesn't lie. It can't perform the way your ego can. It holds the truth of your existence in its tension, its pain, its exhaustion. That chronic tightness in your chest, it's your heart's way of saying it's closed, protected, guarded. That knot in your stomach, it's your gut knowing something your mind refuses to acknowledge. That heaviness in your shoulders, it's the weight of carrying a life that isn't yours. Listen to where your body speaks. That's where the fragmented self is trying to come home. The fifth language is through what Jung called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. When the same theme appears across multiple contexts in a short time. When you keep encountering the same challenge in different forms. When life seems to be conspiring to show you something. You think about someone you haven't seen in years, and they call. You struggle with a question, and 3 different sources present the same answer. You need guidance, and a book falls open to the exact page. These aren't miracles or magic. They're the way the deep self communicates through reality itself, showing you that the inner and outer world are connected. That meaning is trying to emerge. The sixth language is through your aversions and attractions, what you can't stop thinking about and what you can't stand to look at. Both are soul language. Strong attraction isn't just preference, it's recognition. Your soul seeing something it needs, something it's missing, something that reflects a lost part of yourself. Strong aversion isn't just dislike, it's often projection. Your soul showing you what you've exiled, what you refuse to own, what you can't bear to recognize in yourself. The person who irritates you beyond reason. They're probably expressing something you've forbidden in yourself. The art that moves you to tears. It's probably speaking to a part of you that's been silenced. Pay attention to intensity. It's always meaningful. And finally, your soul speaks through the void, through emptiness, through the feeling that something is missing, but you can't name what. This void isn't depression, though it can look like it. It's not apathy, though it can feel like it. It's space. Space created by the soul when it removes itself from a life that doesn't honor it. When the false self is running the show, the true self withdraws, and what's left is emptiness. But here's what most people miss. The void is not the problem. The void is the solution beginning. It's the soul clearing space, making room, saying, the false must go so the true can return. Don't fill the void with distractions. Don't medicate it. Don't productivity hack it away. Sit in it. Let it speak. Because in the emptiness, in the silence, in the space between who you were and who you're becoming, the self whispers its truth. All of these languages, every signal, every symptom, every sign, they're not evidence that something is wrong with you. They're evidence that something in you is still fighting, still alive, still refusing to let you disappear completely into the performance. Your soul hasn't given up on you. It's been speaking all along. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? So you've recognized the fragmentation. You've heard the soul's language. You've seen the prison bars. Now what? How do you return to yourself? How do you gather the scattered pieces? Jung's answer was both simple and terrifying. You don't add anything. You remove. You don't build a new self. You strip away the false until only the true remains. This is the process he called individuation. But let me be clear about what it isn't. It's not self-improvement. It's not becoming a better version of yourself. It's not achieving wholeness. It's removing what blocks wholeness. Wholeness is already there, always has been. It's just buried. The first step is the hardest. It's learning to distinguish between the voice of the authentic self and the voice of the conditioned ego, between what you genuinely feel and what you've learned to feel, between who you are and who you've been trained to be. This requires a practice Jung called active observation. It's not meditation, though it can look similar. It's the practice of watching yourself without judgment, watching your thoughts arise without claiming them, watching your emotions surface without identifying with them, watching your behaviors unfold without defending them. You become the observer of your own life. And in observing, you start to see the patterns, the automatic responses, the inherited beliefs, the conditioned reactions. You start to see how much of what you call you is actually just programming. When you're angry, you watch the anger. Where did it come from? Does it feel like yours or like something you learned? When you're afraid, you observe the fear. Is it protecting you from real danger or from something you were taught to avoid? When you make a choice, you notice the choosing. Are you choosing from your center or from expectation? This practice creates space, distance, and in that distance, something remarkable happens. You stop being the character in the movie and become the one watching. You stop being the dreamer and become the one aware of dreaming. The second step is confronting what Jung called the shadow. All the parts of yourself you've denied, hidden, rejected. This is where most people stop, because the shadow is where we put everything we find unacceptable. Our rage, our selfishness, our darkness, our shame. But here's the secret. The shadow isn't just darkness. It's everything unexpressed. That includes your light, your power, your creativity, your uniqueness. Often, what we hide in the shadow isn't our worst qualities. It's our most authentic ones. The ones that didn't fit. The ones that weren't allowed. To confront the shadow, you need to do something radical. You need to dialogue with it. Speak to the parts of yourself you've exiled, not to fix them or change them, but to understand them, to hear their story. Find a quiet space, close your eyes, and invite forward a part of yourself you've rejected. Maybe it's your anger, maybe it's your fear, maybe it's your desire for recognition, maybe it's your need to be alone. Whatever it is, give it a voice. Ask it, why are you here? What do you need? What were you trying to protect me from? And listen, really listen. Not with your rational mind trying to analyze, but with your whole being trying to understand. You'll be surprised what emerges. The anger that's actually self-respect trying to establish boundaries. The fear that's actually wisdom trying to protect you. The shame that's actually authenticity being punished for existing. As you listen, as you understand, something shifts. The shadow stops being the enemy and becomes what it always was, a lost part of yourself trying to come home. The third step is releasing the masks, what Jung called the persona. This is delicate work because the persona isn't all false. It contains real parts of you. The challenge is distinguishing between the persona as a tool and the persona as an identity. You need your professional persona, but you're not your job. You need your social persona, but you're not your personality. You need your familial persona, but you're not just your role. The practice is noticing when you're wearing a mask and consciously choosing to keep it on or take it off. At work, yes, you might keep the professional mask, but in your intimate relationships, in your time alone, in your inner world, the mask must come off. Start small. Find one relationship, one context where you can practice being unfiltered, where you can say what you actually think, feel what you actually feel, be what you actually are. Not to be cruel or reckless, but to be honest, to stop performing. It will feel terrifying, like standing naked in public. Your whole system will want to put the mask back on. But if you can tolerate the discomfort, if you can stay exposed for just a moment longer, something remarkable happens. You remember what it feels like to be real. The fourth step is honoring the opposites within you, what Jung called the anima and animus. This isn't about gender, it's about polarities, the receptive and the assertive, the intuitive and the rational, the feeling and the thinking, the being and the doing. Most people over-identify with one pole and exile the other. Men exiling their receptivity and living only in assertion. Women exiling their assertiveness and living only in receptivity. Thinkers exiling their feeling. Feelers exiling their thinking. But wholeness requires both, requires all. The practice is consciously engaging the underdeveloped pole. If you're always doing, practice being. If you're always thinking, practice feeling. If you're always assertive, practice receptivity. If you're always receptive, practice assertion. This isn't balance, it's integration. It's having access to all of yourself in service of what each moment truly requires. The fifth step, and perhaps the most crucial, is learning to live from the self rather than the ego. This is the heart of individuation. The ego doesn't disappear, but it stops being the center. It becomes a servant of something deeper. How do you know when you're living from the self? There's a quality to it, a stillness. Not the stillness of suppression, but the stillness of presence. You're not reacting from old wounds. You're not performing for approval. You're not defending against exposure. You're simply here, fully, completely, as you are. The practice is checking in throughout your day. Where am I operating from right now? Am I speaking from my center or from fear? Am I choosing from my truth or from conditioning? Am I present or am I performing? And when you notice you've slipped into ego mode, into performance mode, into survival mode, you don't judge. You simply return, again and again. Return to center, return to presence, return to self. The sixth step is working with what Jung called amplification. This means taking the symbols, the dreams, the images that arise from your unconscious and expanding them. Not analyzing them, but living with them, drawing them, writing about them, dialoguing with them, letting them speak to you in their own language. If you dream of a locked door, don't just interpret it. Draw the door. Describe it in detail. Imagine standing before it. What does it feel like? What's behind it? What would happen if you opened it? Let the symbol reveal its meaning through engagement, not through intellectual analysis. Your psyche speaks in images because images carry more truth than words. They're multidimensional, paradoxical, alive. Respect that language. Learn to speak it. The seventh and final step is what Jung called the transcendent function. This is the ability to hold tension between opposites without collapsing into one side, to be both strong and vulnerable, both certain and open, both individual and connected. Most people can't tolerate this tension. They collapse into one pole, either or thinking, black and white, good and bad. But the self lives in the space between, in the paradox, in the both and. The practice is catching yourself in either or thinking and asking, what if both are true? What if the opposite of one truth isn't a lie, but another truth? This isn't relativism, it's wholeness. It's having the capacity to hold complexity without needing to reduce it to simplicity. These 7 steps aren't linear. You don't complete one and move to the next. They're spirals. You return to them again and again, each time deeper, each time more true. And here's what you gain. You gain yourself, the only thing that was ever truly yours, the only thing that can never be taken from you, your essence, your truth, yourself. And when you live from that place, when you operate from that center, everything changes.